Welcome to my class, Creativity, Style, and Efficiency in Adobe Illustrator. I'm sure everyone's really eager to jump right on the computer and get to work in Illustrator. But before we do that, let's think through the process a little bit and try to build as solid a foundation as possible for the artwork that we're going to be creating. If you remember from the project guide, we're going to be creating a story scene. So it can either be from your own imagination or from a story that you really love. We're going to basically start by gathering ideas. So there's lots of great ways to gather ideas. You can look through books, you can watch movies, read stories. You can also look for visual references. One of my favorite things to do is go on Google Images and get some visual references. Other things I like to do are go out in the world and explore and take things in, and I'll take pictures and bring a lot of stuff back home with me. I think one of the mistakes a lot of artists make is that they don't spend enough time really thinking through the reference material portion of the process. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out research project. It's just a matter of going out, seeking some reference materials, not just for poses and different textures or something you might want to draw from the real world, but just for ideas and inspiration. When I'm illustrating story scene art, one of the first things I like to do is start doing some really simple sketching and getting fast ideas out of my head. I keep it really loose and simple. I don't spend any time really at this point on refinements. So what I'm doing right now is I'm drawing the concept that I came up with. And the concept that I came up with was a bear who was kind of wearing a television as a helmet. And I know it's a little strange, but this is how my mind works. So again, you can tell I'm keeping it really loose, really simple. And I like to take notes while I'm working on things like this as well. So I was thinking this through as I was walking around, just doing my day-to-day business, and this idea popped into my head. So I'm trying to get as many ideas down on paper, just in notes as possible, because sometimes I can refine things a little better with notes than I can with just a simple sketch. So I've got that down. I'm going to start drawing a little bit of the background now. So I had this idea that the bear would kind of be roaming through this man-made wasteland, but that the wasteland would kind of resemble in some ways a forest. So it's not a forest in the conventional sense. It's these broken pieces, so it's this like broken metallic sort of world. And what made me think of that was I originally thought of him roaming through the forest, but I liked the idea of flipping it and making the forest made out of this like gray, dull metal instead of a nice, lively forest, to kind of put him in a pinch. So the bear himself, I want to use bright, warm colors to symbolize nature. So I'm making a note of that so I don't forget that when I start moving into the major creation process. And that TV, I want it to be a wood grain TV. And I thought that it would be nice if some other animals from nature kind of followed the bear. So I want to put some birds in here. So he's kind of got these seekers with him, so they're looking for refuge as well. Okay, so we've laid a pretty good foundation for the art we're going to be creating in this project. But let's take a break now and kind of break our routine, get away from our workspace, and think a little bit more about what we're going to be creating. I personally find it to be incredibly important to get away from the work area and get away from the computer, get away from people for that matter, kind of to isolate your thoughts, give yourself some time to mull over what you're going to be creating, because I feel like some of the best ideas come during that period. So you've laid out some ideas, you have an idea of where you want to go, and you walk away, give yourself a break, think about stuff a little bit more, and it's amazing the great ideas that will come into your mind. So what I personally like to do is get out of the house. I like to be outside. I like to be in nature, so a lot of times I'll go on a hike, or I'll just run or walk around the neighborhood. I'll often see things that inspire me, or something will trigger a thought that will be fed back into my final product. It's good to bring along like a sketch pad, just something little, or a camera or something that you can record some reference images if you need to. Sometimes it's good to go to a place like a museum. You can get some ideas and inspiration from art in a museum. Another thing I've done before that's been really great for me is I like to go to parts of town that are a little different, or they're not necessarily the types of places I would normally go. So I might take a break and take a trip to Chinatown and walk around some shops. It's pretty amazing some of the things you'll see and what will kind of be fed back into your final product. So I think right now, put your pencil down, shut your computer off, take a break, think about what you're going to be creating, and see if you can come up with any great ideas that can be fed back into the reference sketch we'll be creating in the next step. Okay, so now it's time to start the reference sketch. You can't see it obviously because we're focused on one piece of paper, but around me I've got all of my materials that I've gathered already. And I've got a big picture of one of the bears that I downloaded on the screen, so I can see it really big in front of me while I draw. I'm going to start by kind of drawing in, just really quickly, my bear. And I'm going to add a little detail along the way. And I'm drawing it really in light pencil right now, because I'm going to go over this again in just a few minutes. So my goal right now is just to kind of set the initial composition, and I'll probably be brushing this up and fixing it as we move along. And I can see the bear's face a little better now and get a better sense for what a bear's snout might look like, because I'm looking at it right on my screen. Okay, and he's kind of got a little whiter fur around his snout. Probably have to abbreviate this a little bit here. Anyway, there it is. That's basically what I'm looking for. And I'm going to box that in with kind of this idea I have for almost like a helmet made out of a television set. I'm going to refine all this in just a minute, but right now I'm just trying to get this done quickly. And as you can see, I'm not really taking too much care to iron out all the details, so I'll refine it a little, but generally speaking, I don't spend a lot of time on these sketches. I'm just doing this for ideas. I'm going to put some dials at the bottom. I always liked when TVs had these dials at the bottom to kind of control different levels like tint and contrast and stuff like that. As a kid, I always played with that stuff. I always liked the way it looked. And I'll put these knobs here, a little power button. Maybe I could put like a little speaker grill. I don't know. I could play around with that. Again, I'll do more of this when I get into vector. But right now I'm just trying to get these ideas down and get a little more of a refined composition before I start creating the vector art. All right, so draw the back of this television set. And I'm going to add a little, instead of just having it drop straight back, add a little kind of contour, or a little extra element there on the back, because I always liked when those when objects like this aren't just flat rectangles, and add a little ventilation grills just for decorative purposes, just kind of to make it look a little more interesting. Maybe some dots, whatever I want to do. Okay, anyway, now that I've got that, I'm going to look at another image. I'm going to quickly switch images on my computer, and I'm going to move into doing a body. Now for him, I want him to have his head turned a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have his body kind of twisted, so his head, he's kind of looking behind his shoulder a little. And I'll give him a big old belly. I'm going to want to refine this. Anyway, have his arm in here. And one of the things I thought is that he could be carrying something important. His arm needs to be fatter. Anyway, refine this a little bit, like I said. His arm needs to be fatter. I'll fatten it up, but I want him to be holding something that kind of symbolizes this idea that he's like kind of symbolizing nature in this wasteland of mechanical kind of decay. And so he's going to be holding something special. I'm going to have to think about this a little bit, and I'll probably, in the next step of my more refined sketch, I'll probably add that in. So for now, I'm just putting some little magical kind of dust. I'm going to add in some hills. So I want these hills to be kind of nice and sloping. So compositionally, it wraps him and focuses attention in on the bear. So then I'll add in these kind of weird metal structures. So in my story, this bear is kind of going on a journey to reestablish the nature that he lived in. The world around him has kind of crumbled a little into this kind of metallic man-made wasteland. So there's going to be some objects that kind of resemble trees, but they're not trees. They're these pipes and metal parts. So I'm going to draw more of these weird kind of objects in, and these are going to be pretty simple in the final rendered piece on when I take it into Illustrator. These aren't going to be anything crazy. These are going to be pretty straightforward, simple pieces. Like I said, they're going to kind of look similar to trees, but not necessarily exactly like trees. But they're going to look a lot more spare and kind of broken. I may add some clouds into the sky a little bit, but I'm definitely going to be adding a few birds. I love drawing birds. I think they're ridiculous animals. They're absolutely insane looking if you really look at them. These little tiny dinosaurs flying around. And they're a lot of fun to draw. So I love, whenever I can, to work birds into a piece. I'll do it. And I usually make them look pretty insane. I think that's even more fun. All right, so I'm going to refine all that. I may add one more, but I'm probably not going to go too far because I don't want to spend a lot of time when I'm trying to demonstrate stuff, a lot of time on trying to refine my details. Okay, so I've gone in a little bit here and I've started to refine my sketch a little. And what I'm doing is I'm going in with a darker gray pencil and I'm kind of going over my lines and refining it as I go along. One thing I didn't mention before that I probably should mention is that I wouldn't suggest using giant paper for this. I'd actually suggest using pretty small paper. I'm just using a normal letter size, US letter size piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. And the reason for that is because, remember, this is just a reference sketch. So you might notice I'm adding a little fur in here. So this is just a reference sketch. This isn't going to be a final piece, and this isn't going to be scanned in by me. I just don't like to work that way. Sometimes clients will ask for that from, I guess, other artists. I've actually never been forced to follow that process where you create artwork on paper, a really tight pencil sketch, and then scan it and trace it in. That's never happened to me. I've always kind of told clients how I work, and they're okay with it. So, explore your options. But if you have to scan it in, then do it, Do whatever the client needs if you're working on a job. I'm not going to say don't do it, absolutely. I just think that it kind of stifles the creation process a little bit, personally. I'm not a big fan of working that way. Anyway, so I'm not looking to create something that's really tight or really finished, but I want to get enough in there that I can be comfortable and have a nice foundation moving into Illustrator. So I like to darken it. It just kind of makes me feel like this is a little more solid, and it's relaxing. I like sketching. It's fun. So I'm going to kind of refine this a little more, and I'll make these birds look a little more finished. So kind of how I usually draw them in Illustrator. I'm going to give his eyes a different look. I like this upward glance because it bespeaks wisdom. I like to put a humor in my work here, so if you've ever noticed or looked at my stuff, you've probably seen it's a little strange. But generally, I just like things that kind of make me laugh. And sometimes I'll just put in little facial expressions or whatnot that make me laugh a little bit. Or sometimes I'll give the birds strange hairdos. I've given them bald heads before with the little tufts on the side. I like that. That's fun. Anyway, so trying to get them a little more refined and a little more in line with the direction we're going. Probably want to brush that up there. But I can fix that in Illustrator too, because like I said, this isn't final. I'm going to quickly get my landscape here a little more solidified. Probably going to be adding some rocks or other metallic kind of objects once I get it into Illustrator. I'll draw a few in here quickly. But this stuff in the background, for me, for what I'm trying to achieve, not as important. These are atmospheric elements. I'm going to create one. I'll get it down. I'll mimic it. I'm not going to copy and paste it and like warp it or anything like that. I'm actually just going to mimic the pieces. So I'll probably put something in the foreground, like a little bit larger version of one of those. Broken things. Give it a little volume, you know. Anyway, you get the idea. So I kind of give myself an idea of what this might end up looking like. Add in some little rivets. Rivets are fun. Anyway, I'll do the same thing, flesh this out a little more. And then here, I've thought about this some more. I think I just want it to be a little plant, you know? I think that would be fun. It would be kind of nice. So the bear is walking through. Let's give him a little fur on that arm. And let that arm back a little. All right. And then I get that belly out a little more. And so anyway, so we'll make this a little plant. And we'll draw attention to it in Illustrator. With some contrasting colors and effects. So he's kind of transporting this in my story. He's finding refuge. He's trying to find a place to rebuild nature in my story. Anyway, so there it is. I'll probably brush this up a little more and then I'll jump into Illustrator. Okay, so I went in and did a few more refinements here and just drew in a couple of quick things. Added a few more rocks, made another foreground object. Before I move on, I'm going to do one other step before I move into Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to look at this and kind of do a little self-critique and try to think through some things that I feel like I could make better once I take it into Illustrator. I guess one of the things I feel like I could make this tree antenna idea, I feel like I can make these branches better. So I'd say work on branches. I just feel like I can refine those a little bit more once I get into Illustrator. I'll make some leaf shapes and probably work through that a little bit and make that a little better. Other things I'm going to do here is I know I want wood grain for the TV. So I'm going to be adding wood grain here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm not only self-critiquing, I'm going to annotate this a little bit as well. I noticed that this is probably going to need to be bigger. So let's say make larger. Okay, so I know that moving in. So I'm kind of just trying to like tighten things up a little bit just with notes. I feel like this is a little bulky back here too. It almost looks like the weight of it would be pulling the bear over a little bit. So maybe I want to say play with angle. On this part here. So I'll play with the angle and lessen the weight of that a little, try to bring it in a little bit and tighten that up once I get it into Illustrator. I'll be adding a little shine in here to make that look a little more, so maybe I should say that. So add shine to the glass. So I need to add shine to the glass. I'm also going to make sure that the colors, I want this to kind of be a dead blue gray all throughout here and in the sky. So I want to make this kind of this dead bluish gray color to kind of give this illusion of coldness. I definitely want to annotate that because I like to kind of get an idea of how I want to play with color once I jump into Illustrator, which is where I really do most of my color thinking. One other thing I definitely want to make a note of is that the colors on the bear are warm, natural colors. So on the bear and on the TV. Okay? I'm going to really focus on making it look as organic as possible. Even though this is a television, I'm going to try to play with it and make it look like something from the natural world. So it has wood grain. So I'm probably going to add some more leafy elements, make it look almost like a living thing instead of a mechanical thing. Again, trying to play with that contrast of this mechanical world versus this natural thing that's happening here. And I feel like I can do that by kind of playing with the idea of this TV. And this TV kind of becomes a symbol, instead of the machine world, it becomes a symbol of the natural world. So it's going to be kind of a weird juxtaposition there. Hopefully that works out. We'll see how it is, but I kind of think it's going to work. And I'm feeling pretty good about this, so I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to get ready to put it into Illustrator.